Street Animal Services of Hopkinton, and I'm Margot Roman, and I'm main veterinarian here. We have 2 other veterinarians that work with us and have a complete holistic health center in our lower level, which has 2 chiropractors, a physical therapist, massage, craniosacral, polarity, and Reiki in the lower level. And on the upstairs up here in the main clinic, we are doing homeopathy, acupuncture, nutrition, and conventional, traditional, integrated veterinary medicine. So one of the reasons for making this videotape is that I found that after several years of doing a holistic intake, I was repeating myself with some of the same issues, and I really wanted to spend more individual time with you and your pet versus giving you some of the basic introduction to why we are trying to achieve a different level of health with this type of alternative medicine. So well, why I decided to study homeopathy is I've been a veterinarian since 1978, and I did my internship at Angel Memorial Hospital, where I did acupuncture, which they wouldn't let me do, but I ended up doing acupuncture there. So I took the veterinary acupuncture course in 1976 and have been doing acupuncture since then on and off. But what made me decide to study homeopathy, and we'll stay in that area right now, is about 9 years ago, I was going on a camping trip, and I was hugging my dogs goodbye, and I could feel myself getting poison ivy. So I started to go upstairs and started scrubbing my arms to try to get any of the oils off and stuff so I wouldn't get poison ivy. And I had a homeopathic first aid kit that I had bought about 10 or 15 years before and had dabbled a little bit in it, but I really didn't understand how it worked. So I went ahead and started taking some homeopathic remedies, which were for poison ivy, and kept taking them, and it got worse and worse and worse. I kept taking the remedies, it kept getting worse. And literally, it was at the point where my arm is from here to here, on both of my arms, was completely covered with poison ivy and oozing and dripping, and both arms were just so inflamed. And I kept taking the homeopathic remedies, and it kept getting worse. So I talked to forest rangers up in Canada. We were camping, and they said, soak it in the hottest water that you can. So I did that, and it kept getting worse, and I kept taking the remedies. And I thought, oh my gosh, I really, if I had been here in Massachusetts, I would have gone on steroids and antibiotics, no question asked. And it was that bad that I thought that I was getting a secondary cellulitis. But I decided to stick it out because I hated going on antibiotics because I ended up with secondary yeast infections, and I just figured it's better if I don't have to go on the antibiotics. Well, in any case, this poison ivy, was getting worse. But I came back to Massachusetts after 2 weeks. My arms were still red, and I meant to say that I have asthma as well. So I was using the inhaler 2 or 3 times a day while this was going on. I had had asthma for years. And as soon as the redness in my arms went away, my asthma completely stopped. I had stopped using my inhaler, and I thought, oh my goodness, what just happened? I don't even need an inhaler anymore. And I kept thinking, well, it has to be related, because to have the redness in my arms go away and then my asthma completely go away, I just thought there had to be something to it. So I started to read anything I could find on homeopathy. So I kept getting books and reading them, and then they were opening up the first accredited school in New England, and I decided to go ahead and take classes from Dr. Luke DeShepper. It was called the New School of Homeopathy, which is now called the Renaissance Institute of Classical Homeopathy. So I signed up for the class, and in the first lectures that we had to read, and the presentation that we had to read, we read about the laws of Herring. And so this whole thing with the healing, where your body is pushing things to the surface. So I started to think of this as a possible, issue, is that we've got to get the body to heal it. And I thought, well, I can learn homeopathy pretty quickly. I taught at Tufts for about 7 years. I was at Harvard at the Primate Center before that. So I sort of knew, I figured I could figure this stuff out. It's not going to take me that long to figure it out. Well, in all this reading and stuff, I realized it was a lot bigger than I ever thought it would be. And I've been staying in it for 9 years now, and probably will be in it for another 10 years because it's an endless kind of information. But the interesting thing about the poison ivy is about 3 or 4 months into my study, I'm driving into Boston listening to National Public Radio, and they had the head of pulmonology from Brigham and Women's on NPR talking about all the new asthma protocols and all the new medications that were available for patients to use. And someone called in, and this person now is the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. So he is someone who we would respect in his research and his ability to discuss the level of medicine that we think is the highest level of medicine. And so someone called into him and said, what does asthma look like histologically? Meaning, if they took the lungs and they did a cross-sectional piece of the lungs, what would it look like? And he responded that it looks like poison ivy in your lungs. So with that response of seeing that the body was dumping it to the surface, it made me realize that, wait a second, there's something very, very powerful in this homeopathic remedies that is making the vital energy or the strength of the body be able to push it out to the surface. And after this thing happened, I didn't get a cold or an upper respiratory infection for 2 years. I wasn't sick one day for 2 years. And to me, that was so phenomenal that it has made me really feel that it's the way that we need to address medicine. We need to let the body try to heal itself before we are constantly intervening with drugs and steroids and antibiotics and antihistamines and more drugs and more steroids and more antihistamines. And we've seen such great results with animals that we've approached this way that it's really worth putting them through this healing episode or healing crisis that they can go through so that they themselves can heal from the inside out. Were very functional and very well known in the Boston area. And in 1920, when penicillin was developed, they decided they found the magic bullet. We can close these places down. The homeopaths are all quacks. We know how to cure all disease with our new drugs. And they basically did shut homeopathy down in the United States by the discovery of penicillin. But prior to that, in the late 1800s and the mid 1800s, homeopaths were really against bloodletting. It was just, you don't drain out the body's vital energy. You allow the body to use it to heal as much as you can. But the AMA and the conventional practitioners felt bloodletting was the state of medicine. Like the state of art of medicine was to bloodlet. And the homeopaths at that point were considered quacks because they would not bloodlet. And it was a big strife between the whole homeopaths and the allopaths. And that's when the American Medical Association was developed, was because of this whole thing of bloodletting. They were trying to condemn the holistic, the homeopaths versus the allopaths. So homeopathy has had a long history in this country and in Europe. And in Europe, it's very much standard. I mean, you can go I was traveling through France, and every pharmacy has a section for homeopathy. There are homeopathic pharmacies all throughout, and also in Germany, and Italy too. So it's been there for a long time, but it's getting to be part of what we accept in this country as a good way to start our treatment versus the last thing to do for treatment. So if we can initiate the body's own energy to try to heal itself, why not? Instead of intervening with different drugs that may very well have serious side effects and even fatal side effects. One of the statistics that was that I recently heard, that it was 46,000 people in the United States die from drug-related incidents, meaning prescribed medications by physicians. And on the flip side, only 100 people have died from herbal or holistic or something. So it's a huge difference in the number of people and number of issues that have been affected. And we know the drug companies aren't as ethical as we'd like them to be. So having a drug that's been proven this week and we know that is really the top of the line, and then 6 months later to 3 years later it's pulled off the market, and all the studies that were done were considered invalid anyway. Homeopathy has had provings that have been in these books for 200 years, or at least 150 years for Harring's books and stuff. So it's really important that we keep this in the forefront of the way that we practice medicine, and it should be our first choice versus the last thing that everybody selects to do. So